Hello, everyone. This is Fonzo, and welcome to my review of Rain World. I just played through the game as Survivor, which is the default experience for playing through the game that most people would experience. So, my review right now is going to be playing as Survivor with the Downpour DLC enabled, and I will revisit this and do another review after I played all the other Slug Cats and give like a final verdict of the game. Starting off, I'm going to split this into a few sections. The first is going to be gameplay, and then I'm going to talk about the environment and the story. The most important thing in any platformer is the gameplay, so I'm going to be starting there. So, first things first, in terms of a platformer, Rain World has some of the most fluid controls I have ever experienced in the game. I've played a lot of different platformers, ranging from Ori and the Blind Forest to Hollow Knight to Dead Cells. Rain World is up there with very responsive controls. Most of the time, when the character does something weird, I chalk it up to myself. Because I record these like on a weekly basis. So like I'll pop it in for a week and then record. So I don't really adjust too well with the controls, but the responses and the fluid responses from the controls are very nice. You can do a lot of things. You can jump and then backflip in the air. You can bounce off of the walls. You can time it perfectly to do some crazy maneuvers and do that. So I think if you there's a lot of room for maneuverability and even some potential high level skilled speed running with the way the controls are set up, that a lot of these really challenging scenarios you can find in the game, you could do some crazy jukes and stuff. And surprisingly, for a game about survival where kind of avoiding combat is encouraged, there is some very good combat mechanics in the game. For a game about platforming and just going from point A to point B, there is a very fluid combat mechanic system into the game. And it's very simple. You can hold items in your hand, your left hand and your right hand, and you can store an item in your stomach, but that doesn't really help you out of combat. That's just like a little bit of an extra. And you can choose to throw the item or put it down or eat it or whatever. And the two items you can use for fighting, well, there's three, but I'm just going to be focusing on two is a pebble, like a little rock you can find on the ground, and a spear, which is just a big metal stick. So with the pebbles, you can use them to make noise and distract the enemies, and with the spear, you can hit them. But for the most part, you need to hit the weak spots of the enemies. Like a lot of the main enemies you come across are the lizards, and their weak spot is on their body, not their head. Their head will kind of like the spear will hit it and it'll bounce off of them. But the combat's very simple. You have a spear, you throw the spear in your hand, in your right hand. You can switch them between your hands if you want to hold on to an item and then throw the other. So you throw the spear, you hit the weak spot, then you could choose to go up to the combatant and grab the spear or run, and that's about it. So, the thing that makes the combat work so well is the fluidity of the controls, like I talked about earlier. You can do some crazy maneuvers. Like you could throw the spear, hit a lizard in the side, and then backflip off of the wall over the lizard's head, grab the spear back, and then chuck it again. So you could do some pretty crazy maneuvers. And a bit of it's a little bit luck because you kind of have to not get hit, but at the same point, there's also a lot of skill because you can do a lot of environmental maneuvering and using the resources around you to your advantage. Other gameplay, the lizards, for while we're talking about combat, lizards have different types. Their color is they're pretty straightforward. The colors of the lizard represent their abilities per se. So like green lizards are the basic lizards you'd see at the beginning of the game. They just have a lot of health, so they take a lot of spears, but they don't do a whole lot. And then purple lizards can climb. So whereas green lizards can just walk on the ground and you can kind of maneuver past them easily, the purple lizards will start following you and climbing up the poles trying to get you. And then they only get crazier than there. I'm not gonna spoil too much on the lizards, but each one of them has their own difficulty. Aside from combat, the other core mechanic of the game is eating. You have to eat to survive. It's kind of like a survival platformer. So you have a food bar at the bottom. The survivor has seven. These are the little bars are pips, and you have to eat food to fill up those pips and then get checkpoints. You need four pips to reach this solid staggered bar to be able to go into these shelters, which are essentially our safe rooms and rest. And when you hibernate in the shelter, you consume those four pips, and then you checkpoint at that shelter and can move on from there. And then if you die or anything, you go back to that shelter. The other mechanic that goes along with the food system is karma. Karma levels, as far as I know from playing the game, they mainly affect things like going through gates to get to the next area, or maybe some environmental effects. But the most important thing that you care about as a new player is just being able to go through these checkpoint gates to get to the next zone. If you're trying to go from point A to point B and it requires a little symbol. The way the game is structured, I don't really feel so bad sometimes if I end up going all the way to the bottom of the karma or all the way to the top, because the goal is mostly just to have the right karma level when you get to the door. And the higher you are when you get to the checkpoint before the door, the easier it is for you to go through it and then get to the next zone. The other important mechanic to talk about is the cycle length. So this has some positives and negatives, in my opinion. The cycle length is random. It's the first major element of RNG you encounter. I mean, there are other elements of RNG I'm going to be getting to in a little bit, but cycle length is random. I have not been able to figure out how short the cycles are or how long they can get, but there is a noticeable difference between when I'm playing a cycle and it ends really fast and I'm only able to make half the distance I normally did, and I'm playing perfectly and I'm starting to run out of time for the rain, compared to some other cycles where I'm playing like a banana that slipped off of a subway track and then suddenly still have plenty of time. So the other element of randomness in the game is the spawns the animals, the wild animals or the enemies, like the lizards. You could just be walking around, you could be doing everything perfect, and you'll just have a lizard drop straight from the sky and just snipe you and kill you right off of the bat. I've had that happen once or twice. Or you can have, as you're trying to go through, there'll just be something like a daddy long legs parked right at the exit of the zone or at the entrance to another area in the zone. So what happens is you go right through it, you load in the map, and then boom, you're dead. So that's another really rough element of RNG that can be very frustrating because the game emphasizes skill and high levels of playability, but at the same point, it can be very brutal because you could be the most skilled player in the game and then get lizard sniped. The other gameplay mechanic I want to talk about is Iggy, or the little yellow guide you get in the game. Iggy is his community name. So, Iggy is your guide when you start the game. When you begin, he points you to where you can get some food, you can get some bat flies and some fruit, and then he points you to the shelter to rest and then teaches you how to do the checkpoints. And then he starts pointing you to the right. But Iggy's navigation can be completely random and unreliable at times. So while he's pointing to the right, sometimes he'll just decide he doesn't want to give any guidance anymore for a new player. So you can easily get lost. Let's say you're going to the right, but you're not sure because there's like five different paths and you'll wait around for him to point in a direction. He could just sit there and watch you, or he can go through like three or four cycles and he'll never tell you where to go. So a lot of the game expects you to figure out where you're going, and occasionally it'll give you like a little bit of breadcrumbs saying, okay, Yeah, just keep going to the right. I've also encountered a bug with Iggy as well, where Iggy was pointing me after I met with a certain NPC I'll talk about in the story section. But he pointed me to the left because he was trying to point me to go up to go grab the next objective for this quest. And then when he pointed me to the left, he pointed me to the complete wrong direction, pointed me to a different zone, and then decided, oh, well, you're going the wrong way now, so I'm going to stop providing you guidance. And I kind of had to go all the way from the beginning, all the way around and back to where I needed to go. Thankfully, I had some of you guys down here in the comments to tell me where I needed to go. But that is definitely one of the problems I see with the game is it's a bit hard for a new player to figure out where you're going unless you start looking up guides or being given advice. Rain World is a game where it's about telling you a story through the environment and exploration. So things encouragement to go off of the beaten path and encouragement to kind of just do your own thing is good. And so, like, let's say you go off that beaten path to the right, you can find some cool stuff or see some details, and then have to like a little bit of a story told to you through the background. So if you're just playing the game just to explore and see everything, then maybe if you're going the right way, you're going the right way. It's not a problem. If you're playing the game because you just want to see the story and then try to beat the game, it can be a little bit frustrating if you don't really know where to go. The other system, gameplay system I want to talk about before I dive into the environment is fast travel. I do believe the fast travel system in Rain World is the real thing that could use a little bit of work. Like all the other stuff, like the rough mechanics, stuff like that, you can get past that with some trial and error. It would be a lot easier to get past those points if there was a better way to fast travel in the game. The way fast travel works right now is you have to meet certain objectives to get these little notches to get points towards earning a fast travel. Now, because of that, the fast travels are really strong. If you fast travel to a shelter you've been to before, you end up completely refreshing your karma level all the way to max. So you don't have to shelter spam and you can go to any shelter in the game. So, like, if you get stuck at a door and you don't want to go through all the effort of doing that, let's say the door requires max karma, which I have not seen a door really require max karma, but this is an example. Let's say you need to get your karma level to max to go through the door. You could always go to a previous shelter and fast travel to that shelter at max karma level and just go through it. That is entirely possible and it's really strong. But on the same flip side, if you want to go back to a previous area and it's in the other side of the map, let's say you're trying to get some lore pearls to go experience the lore. I'll talk about that in the environment section and the story section because that's related to that. Let's say you want to get some of these lore pearls to learn more about the world and story, and you know the lore pearls are in this area that you want to go to. Well, you can either choose to use one of your precious fast travels. I only got two in the 20-ish hours of gameplay I took to beat the game. I'm sure I could have gotten more if I knew the exact conditions to get more of them. But for now, I'll just say I only got two from just trying to figure it out on my own. So I would have to use one of those two fast travels just to go to that area, and then maybe another one to get leave that area afterwards. And that's what I had to do at one point. When I got to a certain point in the game and met a character, I'll talk about that in the story section, they kicked me out of the room and said, "Okay, you're done with this area." But I missed an important item, the neuron fly. So, because I wasn't allowed to go backwards through the room just to grab one of the flies, my only options were to spend maybe an hour or two to go all the way back around, climb all the way back up, and do the whole zone again just to get one of the flies, or to fast travel to a shelter inside of there, then grab them. and then go all the way back to the other character or fast travel there. I chose to fast travel back and then fast travel all the way to the shoreline to the other character just so I can continue the story and learn more because I really wanted to learn a lot about the game, but I also did not want to sink in hours exploring. The game really emphasizes exploration. You could beat the game without seeing a single one of the characters and just go from point A to point B and increase your maximum karma and then go down below. But the beaten path is you meet these two NPCs and then you go down. If there was a little bit more of a fluid fast travel system, it would encourage players like me to go all the way from, let's say I want to go do this. I want to explore this zone, but in case I get stuck, I don't want to risk getting stuck at a shelter, right? So let's say I go through this whole underwater segment in this area called the drainage system that I really wanted to check out. Something that kind of pushed me away from exploring it a little bit was I did not know if I did that whole water segment, if I would end up getting myself stuck at a shelter, then trying to get out, if that might take me a significant amount of time. So let's go ahead and talk about the environment now. So there is a few things to talk about the environment, and the most important things I want to start with are the AI and the storytelling of the environment. So first, the AI. So the biggest benefit and the biggest drawback of Rain World is the AI of the game. And I say that because you might go look down on the reviews of Rain World on Steam and see people saying things like the game doesn't respect your time or the game is very brutal and stuff like that, like the placements and stuff. Essentially, the zone's programmed to have a few enemies or with I wouldn't even say they're enemies, I would just say they're other animals in the zone that are trying to survive naturally in their environment. It's programmed to have a few of them, like a few lizards, a few spiders, a vulture or two. They're just going about their own business and they're doing their own thing. So they could literally be anywhere because the game doesn't revolve around you. You're in the world trying to survive and make your way through it. So the game, everything just proceeds kind of naturally, as you would say. For example, you might go through and there'll just be a lizard sleeping on one of the doors or little doorway exits, which is what people would say the game disrespects your time because it'd be really difficult to kind of make it through that exit if you needed to. The lizard's sleeping on it, and you just kind of go through, and the lizard just goes, "Oh," and then you're dead. But at the same point, these the lizards and the vultures and essentially all the other creatures in the environment are all doing their own thing. You're just there as sort of an intruder into their environment and you look tasty. But that doesn't mean that they're all out for you. You could essentially come across a vulture, and then as you're running from the vulture, you could run from a lizard, and then the vulture will decide the lizard's easier prey, then go for that. And then you can go through a lot of zones without even fighting. My playthrough, I granted I died a lot to the lizards and stuff, but I didn't end up killing a whole lot of them either. Most of the time, I avoided them. Either I just let them naturally pass by because some most of the time they'll be moving around, and you just go into an area and you'll find like one of these lizards are just halfway going through another, or you go into another room and you see some sort of like fiesta where the lizards are fighting scavengers and they're fighting vultures because there's just a lot of stuff going on. The game has probably one of the most immersive environments in terms of like storytelling of going into this naturally wild environment as like an outsider. The other thing to talk about is just the environment in general. The game doesn't tell you a whole lot for the story. It kind of goes with the Dark Souls approach, but even more Dark Souls than the Dark Souls approach. And by that, I mean, in a lot of Dark Souls games, you'll get the story through items and reading descriptions. The game is just like, nah, you're not reading anything until way later in the game, and for the moment, you're going to learn the whole story off of pictures and the environmental details. you'll go through this industrial complex that really feels like you're in the industrial complex. And you'll go through an area like the Shaded Citadel, which is really dark and ambient and spooky. You'll go through like a ruined section of the city, which just feels really empty. Or you go through a shoreline that used to do a lot of swimming. Every single area in the game, either a side area or a main area that you need to go through, all tell their own story of what happened to them. The other thing I want to talk about for the environment is the music. So I feel like the music goes into the environment section since it really builds it up. The music is probably one of the best things this game has to offer. There wasn't a song in the game that I did not like, and I really do enjoy the soundtrack. From the beginning of the game, when you're open to the main menu, you're blasted with a song that's just kind of like peaceful but like somber. And then as you go into the game, most of the zones have their own little theme when you first enter them. Like the Shaded Citadels kind of got this like techno beat to it a little bit when you walk into it. But on the downside for the music is all that custom zone music does not last for very long. It is not. You probably have like a good minute or 2 minutes of soundtrack when you enter a zone, and then it just becomes quiet ambiance because the music's just like, I'm done. I played the full soundtrack. I'm not gonna loop. Good luck. And then you're left to just listen to the environmental sounds. So Rain World is a very quiet game at times, but there is one instance music always does play. Music is an indicator for how much in danger you are. The one thing I picked up on very fast from the gameplay was as you there's more and more hostile creatures around, and the more in danger you are, like maybe there's a few lizards and a vulture, the music will pick up. So you'll have like this soft beat with like you'll get this soft beat in the beginning when there's just like a lizard. It's kind of like a sound cue that there's enemies nearby and you're not alone. And then the sound cue starts picking up almost until like as the community memes, the slug cat is part of the song screaming because there's so much going on. And I think on alone, the game is worth playing through just for experiencing the environment and then the sound that has to go with it. It really does a good job at telling you a story without directly shoving it in your face. With that, I just want to talk a little bit about the story of the game. I'm not going to go into too much so I don't do a whole lot of spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled at all, you could skip to the end when I give the my overall conclusion of the game. But I want to just dive into a few details here. As I said, most of the story of the game is done through the environment. You have music and then background pieces and this lighting that kind of just tell you what happened in this world and where you're at and what stuff happened. But there are a few characters who can help tell the story too and really flush out the details. There is Moon. You meet her all the way on the right side of the shoreline. She is the main storyteller in the game because most of the information you can get in the game come from these things called lore pearls that you can be find lying on the ground. Most of them are small little tidbits here and there, but a few of them contain some important information if you want to learn about the history of the world. You give Moon the lore pearl, she reads it, and she tells you a story. So that's kind of how you get a lot of the lore. Either that or you go on like a wiki or something and just kind of look up what all the lore pearls say. Probably save you a lot of time. The other NPC you encounter in the game is Five Pebbles. He's the one when you go all the way through the wall and through some other special areas who gives you the ability to kind of speak in some essence or read or whatever. He just gives you the ability to communicate. And then he is the other navigator in the game after you're done with Iggy. He just tells you, go left, jump into a pool of acid, get out of my sight. You can now read. Life's miserable. Essentially, stuff like that. Unfortunately, you can't get any further guidance from Five Pebbles. After you talk to him once, he tells you to go left and go down, and then he never says a word again. If you go back to him, he zaps you. With that in mind, those two characters are the main sources of lore, spoken through communication, verbally or lore dialogue and stuff like that. The other method of storytelling the game does outside of the environment and those two characters is through the artwork. And the artwork is absolutely beautiful. As you go through the game and you rest at the shelters after encountering major events in the story, you'll be given an art piece of artwork in the shelter. And this piece of artwork kind of tells a little bit of the story of Slugcat's journey just to get you invested. You kind of feel that journey along with the Slugcat, despite the fact that the Slugcat, the entire game, doesn't say a single word. And I really appreciate that. I like it when a game subtly tells a story without shoving it in your face. And I think Rain World really does a good job at that. With that being said, I want to just give a general overview of my opinion of the game now. Overall, I think Rain World is a game about exploring and experiencing a environment and kind of like experiencing this other world and bringing out these emotions or like these somber and sad emotions. And I think it really does a good job at that. In terms of exploration and environmental storytelling, the game is great, but it does have a little bit of drawbacks that could use some work, like the fast travel system. Going from point A to point B can definitely be frustrating or hard, and it takes a lot of skill to do it and not spend a significant amount of time while doing it. And there are some aspects of the game that are can be considered a little bit unfair or frustrating, like the entirety of Chimney Canopy, which is my least favorite zone, and I really hate it. I feel like the game could have been a lot better if it didn't exist, but that's just me. Maybe some of you guys like Chimney Canopy, and I'm the only one who doesn't. But there are definitely some downsides. It's not a perfect game, but I think it's good enough for what it does. Overall, I would give Rain World an 8.5 out of 10. I know that sounds really high compared to some of the stuff I was saying, but I was intentionally being a little bit more harsh on the gripes because I think the game could be so much better than what it is right now, but it's just got a few kinks that need to be worked out or at least navigated around. So I'm really excited to see what the other Slugcats have to offer or what challenges or difficulties they bring to the game. Rating and feedback are just about playing the Survivor Slugcat with Downpour enabled. It's still a really good game. I do want to give a special shout out to those of you in my community who provided a lot of guidance and really helped me out when I was stuck without spoiling the game, but just gave some general feedback and advice or answered some of my questions and yeah, helped me really get into it and get past some of those like more frustrating moments like Chimney Canopy. For that, I wanted to give some special appreciation and give you guys a shout out. So I'm going to go call you out by name. Vulpine Cortex, thank you for recommending Rain World for me. I came into the game completely blind. I did check it out on the Steam store, but I had no idea what I was expecting until I dove right into the game. And I think that really got me captivated, just not knowing what I was going into it and just experiencing it firsthand. I want to thank Zap Trap 1 21474, the EJ Factor. Math is, I do apologize if I pronounce your names wrong. Math is just, I'm just going to say Matt. Matt and V9524. All of you guys commented very frequently on the videos, providing feedback here and there, and I really did appreciate it. It really did make my day after I uploaded a video, seeing what you guys had to say and like the general piece of advice or just some general feedback and commentary on the gameplay. I'm really glad that Rain World has such a great and welcoming community. It's probably one of the most friendly communities I've experienced when playing a game, and it probably affects how much I enjoyed the game in general, seeing how nice everyone is. Now for some special announcements. First, I'll be posting a poll on this channel right when this video goes live, giving you guys the opportunity to vote for the next Slugcat that you want to see me play. It will list all the options aside from Survivor, since I just beat the game on Survivor. And I'll be keeping this poll live all the way until the 14th on Thursday. So that should give everyone plenty of time to vote on which Slugcat you want to see me play next. And the second announcement is on Thursday, the 14th, I will be going live here on YouTube to go play some Hunter gameplay. I'm not going to go beat the entire game as Hunter in one live stream. I'm just going to try the gameplay out on Hunter just to see what it's like. A lot of people say that the Hunter playthrough is really hard. So it's kind of the let's see how far I get in Hunter before I start my next playthrough on another Slugcat and see how different the game varies between the Slugcats. Anywho, if you guys like this video, please give it a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Generic survival.